This third grade classroom is getting settled for their reading workshop. The teacher has asked them to put their book baggies in their reading spots and get out their Reading Life folder to bring to the mini lesson area. Students keep the books that they're reading right now and their on-deck books in book baggies that go to and from school each day.
Just like all great athletes, they set goals for themselves. Let me tell you a story. Last year, I set a goal for myself to run my very first half marathon. Okay? So today, we're going to use those to kind of help guide us to see what we need to work on and what our next goal should be as readers. You are going to put a star next to one or two ways you can grow yourself as a reader and turn that into a goal. Off you go.
For this particular mini lesson, that's a bit different than the traditional one. The teacher is sending the students off to their reading spots to do the active engagement portion of the mini lesson and then transition seamlessly into their independent reading time. The students take a couple minutes to get to their spots, gather their materials, and get to work. The lesson for today was all about goal setting. This class is in between Bend 1 and Bend 2, and the goal setting lesson is typically the case. Students are asked to look at the learning progression, to code it up, and then to settle on a goal for their reading moving forward. In between the mini lesson and the independent reading time, the teacher takes a few minutes to walk around the room, make sure everyone has what they need, and is settled for the work ahead before she does her group work or conferencing. Students are getting settled and heading into their independent reading time. Now the teacher moves to conferences. She goes to a student and does a coaching conference with him, keeping track and record keeping on her computer along the way. Notice how she goes to the student instead of calling the student back to a table to meet with her. This reduces transition time, keeps the kids in one spot so they can move seamlessly from the conference back to their independent reading time. Independent reading time is well underway. Notice how children are reading books of their choice. Much work has gone into getting students to understand what books are just right for them, what books they can be successful with, and what independent reading time looks like during a reader's workshop. The work that kids are doing during a reading workshop is all focused on reading. Reading, responding to reading with writing, or getting ready for book clubs and partnerships by stopping and jotting. As the students continue to read around the room, the teacher has moved on to another conference with another student. The rest of the students just keep on reading. It is critical for teachers to look at this time during their reading workshop as their instructional gold. It would be easy to check email or maybe look at the plans for the social studies lesson later on that day, but this is the time of the reading workshop where true instruction takes place, where individualized instruction takes place, and where teachers can really meet the needs of their students through conferencing, guided reading work, if appropriate, and strategy groups as well.
So what do you think drop causes that here and that pattern? What do you think is the cause?
Record keeping and note taking for the teacher can look different and can be suited to what works for each individual teacher. Don't be afraid to take a couple minutes after a conference to jot down important information that will help you in the future. After doing 3 conferences, the teacher is now getting ready to run a strategy group. She takes a couple minutes to gather her things and discreetly starts to call kids back to the table for the strategy group work. Notice how the rest of the kids are continuing to do the reading work that they've been doing all along, reading at their desks or their reading spots, and doing any other reading work that they know they need to do during this time. Students in this strategy group were called together because they have a similar strategy for which this teacher feels they could use and that will add to their reading repertoire and skills. Notice how each of the kids brought with them a different independent reading book. Remember that in a strategy group, children come at varying levels and with their own independent reading books for which to apply the strategy that the teacher is using.
As you're reading fiction, should I be using my character voice right now or my narrator voice? What are some ways maybe that you can tell in a text that you should be using a character voice? So as you are looking in your text, in your fiction pieces, you might notice where there's a character talking, and you want to make sure that you are thinking about what's being said and how the character might say that or react to what was being said to the character. Okay? So
During this strategy group, the rest of the class continues with their independent reading work. Students are settled, staying in their reading spot, and getting down to the important work of reading. Much work has gone into getting this in place, to increasing the reading stamina so that the kids can sit for an extended amount of time and, for the most part, focus on their reading. Lots of these logistics and foundational skills are a part of the units of study that this teacher is using. Instructional aids are a valuable tool during a reading workshop. They can be easily trained to run conferences with students, multiplying the number of students that get met with during a workshop time.
Readers, we have about 10 more minutes.
About 25 minutes has gone by since this teacher released the students from the mini lesson. In that time, she has done a strategy group and 3 conferences. Since this teacher looks at this time of the reading workshop as instructional gold, she squeezes in a couple more conferences. It's important to know that on any given day in a reading workshop, that instructional goal time looks different. Today, she did a strategy group and 5 reading conferences. Tomorrow, she might do 2 strategy groups and 2 reading conferences. The next day, a guided reading group if necessary, and maybe 4 reading conferences. Maybe one day, she just does conferencing. It looks different every single day. It's also important to know that every Monday looks different, every Tuesday looks different, and so on. For example, this was a Thursday. Every Thursday is not a strategy group and 5 reading conferences. Every day looks different. It is part of the reading workshop norms in this classroom that if and when students want to briefly talk with their partner about what they're reading during the independent reading time, they can. They know the protocols and they know what to do, as well as the expectations for talking with each other quickly and then getting back on track with their own independent reading. Part of what the teacher does during the reading workshop time as needed is walking around to make sure everyone's engaged, refocusing them if needed, and checking in as needed as well.
Got 1 more minute, readers.
Independent reading, as well as that instructional gold time for the teacher, is now over, and the class transitions into the share portion of the reading workshop.
We can do the share portion. Quickly. Stop. Go ahead and turn as everyone's still coming over here with their reading life book. Go ahead and turn to the page where you wrote your goal. I want you to share in just a moment your goal with your elbow buddy.
My goal is my water tax.
Who would like to share? Would anyone like to share their goal that they wrote for themselves? Go ahead, Sophia.
My goal is to talk.
For teachers using the reading units of study in grades 3 and up, share time is often a time where book clubs and partnerships discuss their reading.
Is to read some new books and some audiobooks.
Okay.
And with this, the Reader's Workshop for the day comes to a close. This workshop was a little over 50 minutes. Tomorrow, they'll do it all over again.